You are not constantly thinking about the past because you are weak or because you enjoy suffering. You think about the past because something remained open, because there were moments you did not understand, decisions you did not fully choose, and pains you had to tuck away just to keep moving forward. And now, when everything is silent, your mind returns there. Not to punish you, but to ask you to look at what you could never look at before. Living by ruminating on what has already been is like trying to drive a vehicle while staring fixedly at the rearview mirror. It is an exhausting struggle where your eyes seek answers in an image that is moving away, while your present crashes into the inevitable due to a lack of attention. That feeling of having one foot anchored in an invisible mud that prevents you from moving forward is not a flaw in your character, but a sign that your emotional processing system has become blocked in a scene that your consciousness considers unfinished. To understand why your mind drags you again and again toward the same bitter memories, we must look through a magnifying glass at what happened during your formative years, during childhood, when you did not yet have the psychological tools to filter reality. In that stage, your brain was a purely reactive biological mass that absorbed the environment to learn how to survive. If you grew up in a home where conflict was constant, where the emotions of adults were unpredictable, or where silence was the only way to avoid chaos, your brain developed an extreme hypervigilance. You learned that to be safe you had to analyze every gesture, every word, and every decision of those around you to avoid rejection. And that habit of analyzing everything to survive became an obsessive habit that you apply to your past today. Your mind goes back looking for the exact point where things went wrong, erroneously believing that if it finds the why of that pain, it will finally be able to rest. But the reality is that the brain does not look for logic, it looks for closure, and that closure is not found in the past, but in the integration of that memory into your current identity. A recurring example is the person who lives torturing themselves over a professional error, a failed financial decision, or an opportunity they let pass out of fear. The problem is a paralyzing guilt that prevents them from taking any risk in the present. By deepening into the root of this, we see a child who was raised under a demand for absolute perfection, where error was punished with contempt, mockery, or cold indifference. Therefore, that failure in adult life is processed by their nervous system as an unpardonable moral fault that calls into question their right to exist. The long-term consequence is total stagnation, a gray and monotonous life where the absolute security of nothingness is chosen over the minimal uncertainty of action. The body becomes a prison of physical rigidity, with chronic pain in the back and neck that represent the burden of that error they refuse to let go. And the mind specializes in creating future failure scenarios based exclusively on that single event from the past, eroding self-esteem until it is reduced to ashes. Another common and heartbreaking example is that of a person who cannot get over a romantic breakup or the abandonment of an important friendship that happened years ago. The real problem is not the absence of that specific person, but the profound sense of insufficiency that the event left engraved inside. Upon deepening into their childhood, we discover that this person may have been a child who felt that their parents' love was conditional, that they were only seen when they achieved something, or that they had to strive too hard not to be a nuisance. So the finality of that adult relationship was interpreted by their nervous system not as a change of stage, but as the final and catastrophic confirmation that they are not worthy of being loved or protected. The consequence is that today they live in a state of perpetual mourning, comparing every new person to that ghost of the past, sabotaging any possibility of a real connection because their mind is busy trying to fix a wound that does not belong to their present, but to their wounded child who still seeks approval. This fixation creates a chain of disappointments and a deep emotional isolation where the person becomes invisible to themselves, losing years of life waiting for a forgiveness, an explanation, or a return that will never come from the outside, wearing out their heart in a useless weight. To exit this state of constant rumination and close these chapters once and for all, it is necessary to implement strategies that do not seek to erase the memory, but to strip it of its emotional poison. The first deep strategy is the act of conscious renunciation of poetic justice. Closing a chapter means voluntarily accepting that you will never receive the apology you deserve from that person who hurt you, that you will never understand why circumstances were so unfair, and that life does not always close circles perfectly. You must write a letter that you will never send where you declare that you stop demanding the past to be different, that you release people from your judgment so that you can release yourself from your role as jailer. This renunciation is the biological key that turns off the circuit of resentment and returns that energy to your system so that you can use it to create something new. The second strategy is the reconstruction of the internal narrative through observation without judgment. This means that when the memory arrives, you must learn to separate yourself from it, as if you were watching an old movie in which you are no longer the protagonist. Do not try to change what happened or look for culprits. Just observe the physical sensation that the memory produces in your chest or in your throat and stay there, breathing through that tension without putting words to it, allowing the accumulated energy to gradually dissolve. This teaches your amygdala that the memory is just information and not a present threat. Another essential tool is the fragmentation and decontextualization of the memory. When your mind tries to tell you the same painful story with the same tone of tragedy, change its colors, imagine it with ridiculous music, or look at it from an infinite distance. This physically weakens the electrical charge of the neural connection and teaches your brain that you are the sovereign narrator and not the passive victim of your own mental processes. By performing these exercises with daily consistency, you will be forcing your nervous system to perform a synaptic pruning, eliminating the connections of pain and strengthening the routes of presence and peace. Biologically, closing stages is a process of deep cleaning of your operating memory. It is allowing your neurons to stop firing in old survival patterns so that they can dedicate themselves to processing the light, the air, and the infinite possibilities you have right now in front of your eyes. True liberation does not come from forgetting what you lived through, but from understanding with every fiber of your being that you are no longer that person who suffered that harm. Your cells have completely renewed, your lungs breathe a different oxygen, and your consciousness today has a maturity and a power that it did not possess then. You are not betraying your past by letting it go. You are honoring your present life by allowing it to continue without the weight of what no longer exists. Your body desperately needs you to stop injecting it with the cortisol of bitter memory so that your tissues can heal and recover the vitality that accumulated sadness has stolen from them. Peace is the natural state of an organism that has understood that time flows in only one direction, and that fighting against yesterday is a silent and slow way of dying in the present. By letting go of the need to fix what already was, you allow your biology to align with the rhythm of nature, a rhythm that always tends toward renewal, spring, and constant growth. You are closing the door not out of hatred, nor out of weakness, but because that room of the past is already empty, and everything you truly are is waiting for you outside, on the threshold of this second, with open arms and a gaze clean of guilt. See you in the next episode.